We are moving on to topic 3, lesson 2, achievements of Egyptian civilization. So if you can open Savas, I recommend that you open your lesson 2 e-text. In your Google Classroom is your digital notebook. So let's go ahead and get that open as well. And let's go ahead and begin the lesson.
Lesson 2. Achievements of Egyptian Civilization. Like the Sumerians, the ancient Egyptians were great inventors. In writing, literature, art, architecture, mathematics, and science, the Egyptians made advances that paved the way for later civilizations.
All right, let's watch this video, The Legacy of Ancient Egypt.
The Egyptians used a system of writing that you may have heard of called hieroglyphics. A hieroglyphic is a drawing or symbol that represents a word or a sound. Think of it as a very old school comic strip. Hieroglyphics allowed the Egyptians to share and preserve knowledge. Today's lesson on ancient Egypt would be very different had it not been for hieroglyphics, because much of what we know about ancient Egyptians is from their writing. Egyptians did not use cumbersome wet clay to write on like the Sumerians. Hieroglyphics were drawn on a very early form of paper called papyrus. Papyrus was made from the papyrus reed that grew along the banks of the Nile. One of Egypt's most striking contributions to the world is the pyramids. The origin of these awesome structures is rooted in the civilization's great devotion to hierarchy and religion. Egyptians felt that their deceased rulers deserved more than a traditional burial. Initially, tombs of earlier rulers were underground chambers that contained items they believed the pharaoh might need in the afterlife. But always reaching higher, an architect named Imhotep designed a special tomb for his pharaoh with 6 stone mounds, one on top of the other. This was known as a step pyramid. Later, other architects would refine the design, smoothing the sides to create the triangular pyramid we're familiar with today. Building a pyramid took the labor of thousands of workers who cut and placed the enormous stones by hand. This sounds hard, but is actually even more difficult than you're imagining right now. While the pyramids served as a great illustration of the Egyptians' unique and adaptable abilities in architecture, science, and math, they're only one example. We've learned much about ancient Egypt through their paintings and sculptures. Sculptures range in scope from colossal gods to normal-sized people and tiny animals. The Egyptians also developed a lunar calendar, by which they would measure time. Their solar calendar of 365 days is proof of their knowledge of astronomy, the study of stars and other objects in the sky. And it doesn't stop there. They made discoveries in chemistry, which created early forms of glass, mortar, and cosmetics. To make the best use of the Nile's water, the ancient Egyptians created complex systems of irrigation to maximize farming. And perhaps most remarkably, the ancient Egyptians had the deepest medical knowledge of their era. From mummification to surgery, they developed an understanding of human anatomy that would lay groundwork for later leaps and bounds in the medical field. How do you think the Egyptians were able to become so innovative and inventive in such an early era?
All right, continuing on, we have our 5 vocab words right here. Hieroglyphic. It means a symbol that stands for a word, idea, or sound. Papyrus. A writing surface similar to paper named after the papyrus reed that grew along the Nile River in ancient Egypt. Pyramid. Structure with triangular sides. sculpture, statue or other freestanding piece of art made of clay, stone, or other materials, and anatomy, study of the structure of the body and its organs. Please take time and go ahead and define these 5 words in your digital notebook. Make sure to use the Savas definition, which is also the definition on that PowerPoint I shared with you. Moving on to writing and literature. This is clicking next one time in Savas.
Writing and literature. The ancient Egyptians developed one of the world's first writing systems. Egyptian writing preserved some of the world's oldest records and works of literature. What was hieroglyphic writing? Ancient Egyptians developed early forms of writing by 3200 BCE. At around the same time, Sumerians in Mesopotamia were developing their own system of writing. Scholars aren't sure who developed writing first. They also don't know if one group borrowed the idea of writing from the other, or if each people came up with the idea separately. Egyptian writing used hieroglyphics. A hieroglyphic is a drawing or symbol that represents a word or a sound. Mesopotamian cuneiform and Egyptian hieroglyphics shared some similarities. Both systems of writing used signs that represented sounds, or phonemes, and other signs, logograms, that represented the meanings of words or phrases. Most ancient Egyptians did not know how to write. Scribes, or officials who knew how to write, were valued for their knowledge. With writing, Egyptians could share and preserve knowledge. This ability made its complex civilization and advanced technology possible.
Number 1, what does a hieroglyphic writing system use instead of alphabetic letters? You will find that answer in this circled yellow text. This is a quiz question. All right, under Analyze this image, looking at this image, and it's also in your digital notebook for a closer up view if you need it. List the hieroglyph images you recognize. So looking through here, for instance, I see this looks like a bird. So look through here, and what are some things that you recognize? Make a list of, let's say, 3 right here. Number 3, how is writing with symbols different from using an alphabet? Now, this is just using your opinion. If we were to write like this, let's say this symbol says bird. How is writing this symbol different than writing B-I-R-D? Write your answer under number 3. Moving on to page 3 in your digital notebook.
The importance of papyrus. Egyptians invented a material very similar to paper. This material is called papyrus and was made from the papyrus reed that grew along the Nile. Our word paper comes from the word papyrus. Scribes wrote in ink on papyrus sheets. This was much easier than pressing letters into wet clay as the Sumerians did. Papyrus sheets were also easier to transport than pieces of clay. Papyrus sheets had another important quality. They could last a very long time in the dry environment of Egypt. Many documents written on papyrus, including medical books, calendars, stories, poems, and prayers, have survived to the present. Wall paintings may show us how Egyptians lived. However, written records give us a fuller sense of what was in their hearts and minds.
Number 4, for what was papyrus used? You will find that answer in this circled yellow text. This is a quiz question.
Egyptian literature. Ancient Egyptian literature included teachings, stories, poems, religious texts, and histories. Egyptian literature was written on sheets of papyrus, carved on stone monuments, and painted on the coffins of mummies. One famous text, the Book of the Dead, is a guide to the afterlife for dead souls. The tale of Sinu tells the tale of an Egyptian official. Hearing that the pharaoh has been killed, he flees Egypt out of fear that he will be blamed for the crime. Primary source. My heart staggered, my arms spread out, trembling fell on every limb. I removed myself, leaping to look for a hiding place. From the Tale of Sinu, translated by R.B. Parkinson.
Number 5, what is the name of the text that guides souls to their afterlife? In this pink highlighted text, you will find that answer. Moving on to page 4 of your digital notebook, we have now clicked Next 2 times from the beginning of the Savas Lesson 2.
Architecture and Art. The Egyptians created temples for their gods and tombs for their pharaohs. The temple complex at Karnak contains the ruins of the world's largest temples, built with massive blocks of stone. These great buildings and the art they contain continue to inspire artists to this day. Why did the Egyptians build pyramids? Tombs of early rulers were underground chambers or rooms. The burial chamber contained items that the ruler might want in the afterlife. An architect named Imhotep designed a new kind of tomb for his pharaoh, with 6 stone mounds, one on top of the other. The result is known as a step pyramid. Later architects made the sides smoother to create a true pyramid, or structure with triangular sides. During the Old Kingdom, 3 enormous pyramids were built at Giza, his son Khafre, and his grandson Menkaure. The largest is the Great Pyramid of Khufu. For nearly 4,000 years, this pyramid was the world's tallest building. Nearby stands the Sphinx, a famous statue. The Sphinx guarded the road to Khafre's pyramid. When they were built, these pyramids were the largest structures on Earth. They were a great achievement. They show Egyptians' command of mathematics and advanced building techniques. Building the pyramids also required the labor of thousands of workers. Workers cut and placed the huge stones by hand. Scholars once thought that slaves had built the pyramids. They now think that many workers were farmers. The great age of pyramid building ended about 2200 BCE. Pharaohs who ruled after that time carved massive tombs from the cliffs at the edge of the Nile Valley. Egypt's massive tombs and temples show that Egyptians valued monuments to the gods, including pharaohs.
Number 1, what was the purpose of the pyramids? Right here in this yellow circled text, you will find the answer. This is a quiz question. Number 2, when did pyramid building end? You will find that answer in this blue highlighted text.
Painting and sculpture. Egyptians were skilled artists and builders. Much of what we know about life in Egypt comes from paintings on the walls of tombs that show Egyptians at work and at play. Their purpose was not decoration. The paintings were created to provide the person buried in the tomb with all of the objects and pleasures shown on the walls. Egyptian artists also created wonderful sculptures. A sculpture is a statue or other freestanding piece of art made of clay, stone, or other materials. Colossal statues of gods stood in temples. Egyptians placed smaller statues of people in tombs along with their mummies. If a mummy was destroyed, the statue could replace it as a home for the dead person's spirit.
Number 3, why were paintings in tombs created? You will find that answer in this green highlighted text. If you scroll back up, you can see a couple of these images. Right here you have the Great Pyramid of Giza. It is considered one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. We also have a statue from King Tut's tomb. Let's move on to the next page. We have the 3D model Egyptian pyramids. On the right-hand side, you will see there are 4 different questions. This first question goes along with this first 3D model. So let's look at it. Right here we have, it says, slide your finger or drag your cursor across the image to explore the Great Pyramid of Khufu. So if you can turn this around, oh, there you go. And you can see what the inside looks like. It's kind of like they cut this in half, and you can see what the inside looks like. Pretty neat. All right, let's read it. The Great Pyramid of Khufu is the largest pyramid ever built, incorporating over 2 million stone blocks. Built by the pharaoh Khufu, it contains several rooms. Narrow stairs descend from the entrance to a basement called the subterranean chamber. A narrow ascending passage leads to a grand gallery. The so-called Queen's Chamber may not have been for the Queen at all. Instead, archaeologists believe a large statue of the king was placed there. The king's chamber is where Khufu's body once lay. Archaeologists believe that the chamber was built around Khufu's sarcophagus because it is too large to fit through the doors, the chamber doors. So, number 1, what was the name of the largest pyramid ever built? Go ahead and take a minute. You will find that answer. Whoops. Okay, there we go. You will find that answer in the green highlighted text. We are going to move on to the next by clicking that middle circle. Let's look through these. Merit, wife of Maya, a minister of King Tut. The statue from a grave in Saqqara, Egypt, dates to about 1325 BC. Saqqara, once a burial ground of royals from the Old Kingdom, is the oldest cemetery of a unified Egypt. Home to Egypt's first pyramids, it is considered one of the world's largest burial grounds, spreading almost 4 square miles. It spans more than 3,000 years of ancient Egyptian history. It has yielded many important artifacts, although it has not achieved the fame of the Giza pyramids or the Valley of the Kings. So the statue, Merit, wife of Maya, a minister of King Tut, dates to about when? So if we scroll up, we will see the very beginning. And we'll stop. Oh, heavens. We'll stop right there. It's going to be in the orange highlighted text. Go ahead and get that answer now. Next picture. The Pyramid of Giza, the Khufu boat. The Khufu boat, at 143 feet long and 19.5 feet wide, is the largest royal vessel discovered in Egypt. It was found in 1954, buried next to the Great Pyramid of Khufu. It took more than a decade to reconstruct and is now displayed in the Khufu Boat Museum at the south face of the Great Pyramid. Scholars debate the purpose of the boat. whether it was symbolic for Khufu's use in the afterlife or if it was used as one of the boats during his funerary rites. So the question, when was the Khufu boat discovered? You will find that answer in this blue highlighted text. So you're looking for number 3 here. Next, Valley of the Kings, tomb of Ramses IV. The Valley of the Kings near Luxor, the royal burial grounds of the New Kingdom, is one of the most famous archaeological sites in the world. The tomb of Ramses IV has been open since ancient times, with graffiti on the walls bearing witness to the visitors as far back as the ancient Greeks. The tomb is largely intact and richly decorated on the walls and ceiling. The walls include scenes from the Book of the Dead, Book of Caverns, Book of Amduat, and the Litany of Ra. That does not have a question that goes along with it. Let's move on to the next picture. Sarcophagus of Nitocris. Nitocris, an Egyptian royal, has mystery and intrigue surrounding her name and history. Less mysterious is the role of the sarcophagus in Egyptian burial rites. Usually carved from stone, but sometimes alabaster, a sarcophagus made up the outer layer of coffins for royal mummies. Some sarcophagi, like that of Pharaoh Tut, were made of solid gold. There are no questions about that. And lastly, the discovery of King Tut, I think. I don't know exactly what that says. One of the greatest archaeological finds in history occurred in 1922 when British archaeologist Howard Carter excavated the tomb of Tutankhamun. Although a young and minor pharaoh, his tomb had been untouched for thousands of years and provided a trove of treasures. One example shown here is an alabaster perfume vase. The treasures of Tutankhamen's tomb had provided historians with new insights, fascinating people as they learn about this young person's life through the artifacts of his funerary rites. So the question is, what was the artifact displayed from King Tut's tomb? So that we are just going to go ahead and highlight right here. I know it doesn't really give you much mystery there, but in the highlighted text, you will find the answer to number 4. Moving on to page 6 and last page of your digital notebook, you have clicked 4 times in your lesson. Let's listen to this lesson.
Science and mathematics. The Egyptians made many great discoveries in science, mathematics, and technology. Later civilizations built on these discoveries. The Egyptian calendar. Like most early peoples, prehistoric Egyptians probably measured time by the cycles of the moon. The result would have been a lunar or moon-based year of about 354 days.
All right, I'm going to pause it right there. Let's go ahead with number 1. Prehistoric Egyptians used what to measure time? You will find that answer in this green highlighted text. Let's continue on.
Over the years, the seasons would run ahead of such a calendar, since the seasons follow a solar or sun-based year of 365.2422 days. The ancient Egyptians wanted to keep the calendar linked to the seasons to help farmers plan when to plant and harvest crops. They watched for a bright star called Sirius, which would appear above the horizon before sunrise about the same time of year as the Nile floods. Sometimes the first appearance of Sirius came too close to the end of the lunar year, so the Egyptians added an extra month to that year to catch up to the seasons. However, this meant that each year had a different number of days. That made record keeping and planning difficult. So the ancient Egyptians developed a solar calendar with exactly 365 days. They used this calendar for official record keeping. The seasons still slowly shifted through this solar calendar too, so the ancient Greeks added leap years when they ruled Egypt in the 200s BCE. Our modern calendar was modeled after this solar calendar.
Number 2, what made the Egyptian lunar calendar difficult to use? You will find that answer in this circled text. This is a quiz question.
Mathematics. The ancient Egyptians developed a solid understanding of mathematics. Their ability to construct the Great Pyramids proves their command of arithmetic or addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. It also shows their skill in geometry or the measurement of dimensions.
Number 3, did the Egyptians understand math? How do we know this? In this blue highlighted text is the answer for number 3.
Science, technology, and medicine. Ancient Egyptians also made advances in science, technology, and medicine. As you have learned, the Egyptians knew that the star Sirius first appeared in the early morning sky at the same time of year as the Nile flood. This was part of their advanced knowledge of astronomy, the study of the stars and other objects in the sky. The construction of the Great Pyramids shows the ancient Egyptians' mastery of engineering. No other civilization had been able to plan and build structures so large or so perfectly shaped. The ancient Egyptians also made many of the earliest discoveries in chemistry. These discoveries led to many new inventions. These included the earliest forms of glass, mortar for setting stones and bricks, and many kinds of cosmetics. The Great Pyramids were not the only example of Egyptian engineering. To bring the water of the Nile River to their fields, the ancient Egyptians developed complex systems of irrigation or ways of watering land. The Egyptians had the most advanced medical knowledge of their time. From their work with mummies, for example, they learned much about human anatomy. Anatomy is the study of the structure of the body and its organs. The ancient Egyptians were skilled surgeons. Egyptian doctors also studied diseases and developed effective medicines to treat or cure them.
Number 4, along with papyrus, the Egyptians also invented what? You will find that answer in this circled yellow text. This is also a quiz question. And reviewing for the quiz, on page 1, you will need to know all 5 of your vocab words. Page 2, you will need to know number 1. Page 3, you will need to know number 4. Page 4, you will need to know number 1. And page 6, you will need to know number 2 and number 4.